All right, it's showtime. Happy Thursday, everyone. We normally do these on Friday, but happy Friday Eve. I hope you are all having a great week. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Avery Bradford. I handle programming and events for Female Founder Collective and the 10th House. And speaking of the 10th House, it's time to apply for the cohort. It closes on April 14th. So now is your opportunity to apply to join a community of like-minded women. There are so many benefits to being inside of the community. We have vetted resources. You can have one-on-one to many conversations with investors, with CMOs, CFOs, so many vetted and industry leading people. Hello, I see people saying hi, Athena. Hi, Christina. Welcome. And I would love to know while you're here where you're joining us from. I can see it on my end. I know Rebecca and Allie, you two can't see it, but I love to see where people are joining us from. Also, something that's really exciting is we just ended Female Founders Day. And while we were at Female Founders Day, I saw so many 10th House members congregating in the back. And it was wonderful because they actually knew each other because they're taking relationships offline and actually meeting in person. So it was really great to see that they knew each other's faces and each other's names already going into that event because of the networking events and opportunities that we have through the 10th House. Last thing before I introduce our wonderful co-founders is that inside the 10th House, we also have hand-selected small group cohorts, which we call our boardrooms. These are based on your industry and on your stage. So you really have a small group of women to rely on and to move the needle on your business. So if you have any questions about the 10th House, pop it into the chat. I'll try to take some live questions, but when you all RSVP'd, you sent in questions. So you'll hear me shout out your name. If you hear me shout out your name, just say hello, and I'll give you a shout out as well as I see those come through. But without further ado, we have Alison Wyatt here. Allie is the CEO of the 10th House, the North and Female Founder Collective. If you can believe that she's juggling all three, as well as being a mother of three. She's an angel investor to some of your favorite companies. She's also a former CRO, so she's got a lot of advice to give, which we'll get into in today's conversation. Rebecca Minkoff is also the co-founder of the 10th House and Female Founder Collective. You also know her as the designer and creator of her namesake brand. She's an author. She's a podcaster. She just ended maternity leave, so we're getting her right after spending 8 weeks with her baby Leo. So I really appreciate you being here today, Rebecca. And then as a treat, not only for Rebecca and Allie being here, but for you all being here, you can get 15% off to the 10th House if you are accepted through your application using code FOUNDERSPRING15. That's FOUNDERSPRING15. I'll mention it one more time, but it is an exclusive offer for people attending today. So just note that on your end. Okay, I'm going to kick it off. Actually, speaking of motherhood, we have a question from Anastasia for you, Rebecca, and that is, as a mother of four and multi-hyphenate entrepreneur, how do you balance your business and personal life? And I feel like this is the age-old question, especially as women, that we get. So curious what your take is on this.
Yes. So first of all, there's a tiny human in a dark place making up words and throwing them at women in order to make us feel like failure. So the term balance is something that should never be aimed at anyone, frankly, man or woman. And so I think I like to rephrase it as, it's juggling. And it's about who your team is at home and who your team is out of the home and who you rely on as your sergeants, as Allie likes to say. And so for the most part, let's just say I have a nanny. I have a very supportive husband who, in the household we're equals when it comes to activities and taking care of the kids. And I think that it's figuring out who your team is both. And some days I'm doing great at one and some days I'm doing great at the other. Some days I'm failing at both. And I think it's throwing out the expectation that you can do it perfectly all the time or ever, because life is messy. And so I just try to roll with the punches and be very type A about my days and weeks and travel, and then get on the same page with everybody and just try and lay it out the best I can.
I love that you have that printed out. I'm sure you have it on your phone too. That's amazing.
I have it on my phone, but I can't think with it on my phone. So like I do like 3 to 4 months out and it changes my life. And I just know where I'm going to be. My husband knows where I'm going to be. The kids, everything's on this printed calendar, and call me old fashioned, but it works much better for me.
I mean, if it works, it works. And then we have a question too from Christina G, and that is, what are your personal top 3 habits that you think have helped you become successful? Allie, we'll start with you. I love this question, Christina.
Well, I feel like I don't have like my go-to set, but I would say that the top 3 would be calendaring, like Rebecca said, just knowing where everything sits and looking at it ahead of time. When it gets really busy, sometimes I'll forget to look at it, and all of a sudden the day is there and you feel like you start from behind. And so making sure you're looking ahead of time and you know how to plan your day, constantly reprioritizing that is, I think, the second one, right? So first it's planning, then it's constantly in real time looking at your priorities and making sure that you feel good about the ones that you've set ahead of time, because you'll often find, I think, in real time that those priorities will shift. And then I would say for me, I need sleep. I'm not one of those people that can go with 5 or 6 hours sleep. I often would read those Fast Company articles or Inc. articles and feel a little bit bad about myself that I couldn't actually do those 4 or 5 hour nights and be productive. But I think knowing what works for you is really important and being self-aware about that. For me, I know I need 7 hours of sleep. If I get less than 7 hours of sleep, I'm a very unproductive human. I'm not a good mother. I'm not a good manager. I'm not a good human in general to be around. And so I think just acknowledging what works for you and making sure that you stick to that, even if you hear from other people that different things work for them.
Yeah, sleep is so underrated. I feel like we don't hear that as a habit enough. So I really love that one. Rebecca, do you have any habits to add to that list?
I'm going to go for sleep for sure. I think I probably need 9 hours of sleep right now. So I'm going to bed when the baby goes to bed and trying to get him to sleep in. Definitely calendaring and coffee. Coffee.
Coffee will do it. I see Jacqueline saying yes to sleep. Renee saying sleep. Ari saying that's amazing. Ditto from Sloan. Absolutely. I don't have children, but for some reason, if I don't sleep, I can't function either. So I'm right on that track. Allie, this next question is from you, and it's from Jessica O. And that is, Allie, how do you juggle demanding roles in multiple businesses? What tip do you have for managing your time? We kind of talked to this already about calendaring. So do you have anything else to add to that?
Well, I would say that, first of all, don't try to be the CEO of multiple businesses unless you know you have a really great soldier or sergeant, as Rebecca said too, that is at the helm of that business. To be honest, when it comes to the North, Avery is really the point person when it comes to the advisors, right? And we also have Elizabeth, who's extraordinary, who's on our team that runs the day-to-day operations and makes sure that everything is on time, our due dates are met, our people are paid, and also that people are onboarded. I think it's really important to recognize how much work there is and to plan for that, right? Don't try to be a hero and try to do it all. I definitely don't do it all. I think as I've sort of progressed in my career and also lived through various startups and seen them scale, I found the number one thing is learning how to delegate and also learning how to give autonomy with accountability to the people on your team so that you know when you can check in, you can still influence decisions, but you need to give up control and you need to sort of give up this idea that you are going to touch and impact every single aspect of the business all day, every day.
Yeah, I think I've said this to you before, but you are such a great hirer. I feel like we have such a small team, which I don't think people realize. I think there's 5 to, and then sometimes around FFD, 10 of us. But you have hand selected such wonderful women to run the ship. So completely agree. Delegation is huge. Rebecca, this next question is for you from Daniela S. Rebecca, how does having your own name as the company's name affect your emotional well-being and attachment to your company?
Ooh.
Love that.
Depends what day you ask this question. Um, I think that it was really hard for a very long time to separate my name from the company name, and everything was a personal decision. Would I wear that? Do I like it?
Mm,
And you have to get to a point as a company where you stand for a certain aesthetic, and as long as it fits into that, you don't have to. I don't have to now love 100% every single thing we make. I have to like it a lot. It has to be on brand. But as I go through my journey, right, mother of four, am I wearing 4-inch heels? No, but I have customers that want to wear them and they want to look great. And so I had to figure out being able to sort of say, where is my customer in the journey? What is she coming to the brand for? What is its brand promise? And as long as it fulfills that, then if I'm not at that place, depending on the time of month or if I'll never wear heels again, it's still okay with me and it can still be what I would want if I were 25 or 27. So I think that it took me a long time to get there. And I now have guardrails around what that means. Because for maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was someone, helping make product that was not anything that should have ever come out of this company.
mm.
And allowing that to happen is damaging. But things that make sense and are right for the brand, even if not personally right for me at that time, is 100% okay. And it took a while, but I'm there.
Yeah, it sounds like boundaries have played a big role in that and learning over time, which I feel like we all can completely relate to. Um, from Chris, this next question is for both of you, and that's what are the do's and don'ts for fundraising? Allie, I'm going to start with you, and that what makes you want to invest in a company? What makes you say yes?
I'm going to start with the first part of that, and I think do's and don'ts. The general rules are, first of all, follow up, right? And when you follow up, don't just follow up with a blank, hey, just following up, hey, just pinging you. Always provide value when you're following up with an investor with news on benchmarks that you've hit or certain initiatives that you've put into action or hires that you've made or numbers that you're really excited about. Because I think investors always love to see that. It's never annoying to see that. It is annoying to see somebody just repeatedly following up in your inbox. But also acknowledge that you're going to have to do that, right? Because investors are busy, and not me in particular, but VCs will see thousands and thousands of pitches a year. So it is a way to sort of make yourself clear of the noise. Do start to form relationships informally way before you need to fundraise, because you don't want to have to start fundraising when you have to start fundraising, right? Like have that be your first call with a VC when you're first meeting them. Do get warm intros, super, super important. Even if it is from somebody who is loosely affiliated, it's always better to have somebody get introduced to you, and also know the VCs or the investors' strategy. I think so often I'll see founders go out there and they're working so hard to raise money, and they're looking at, a healthcare investor and they're a consumer brand. They're never going to get money from that person. So it's a huge waste of their time. That said, you can use the connections you get to healthcare investors. You can ask them for advice and see if they know people in the consumer field, because a lot of times they'll have that connection. So if you know somebody who's a healthcare investor, and perhaps they're not going to invest in you, but they might be willing to open up their Rolodex, because investors invest together, right? So whether it's angel investors or it's particularly VCs, they want a very deep Rolodex of investors that they can refer their founders to, that are in their portfolio, but also potential founders. And the other thing I would say is, as far as the types of people that I like to invest in, it's the people that do seem really self-aware, who have done their research on the product or the solution or the industry that they're in. So I feel like they're going to be the one educating me at the end of the day. And there's not going to be sort of any gotchas about, oh, I just created a product or a service that is identical to something that already exists and is doing well in that industry. And I would also say resilience, and Rebecca talks a lot about this when she gives founder advice. That is the number one thing that you need as a founder, is the ability to get knocked down a million times over and still get back up, and be passionate enough about what you're doing for it to be okay and to let it sort of roll off. So I think the number one thing, and then the number one reason why I invest, is in the founder. And then, it's product market fit. It's all of the other sort of very tangible benchmark types of things. But I think most important is the person that's at the helm, and that they know how to hire well, they know how to sell, they know how to, bounce back when things get really hard, and that they're very self-aware of what their shortcomings are and can build a team and a business around them that will make up for that.
Absolutely. Rebecca, before I pass it over to you, and I want to emphasize something that you said, Allie, and Allie Dunn actually said that it's a great tip that you should start networking long before you start to raise. And something that I love about the 10th house is that inside we do these kind of practice pitches where we bring investors and we match them up with a group of founders who they would typically invest in, and they can do a practice pitch in front of them. And if it's a really good pitch, or if this seems like someone who's eager or willing to learn, that investor then will send me an email and say, hey, what was Allie's email address? I would love to get connected with her. So doing events like that. And then also we have these lessons learned events where you can ask one-on-one questions, just kind of like I am today with these two VCs and two angel investors. And if you ask a great question and you show that you're eager and willing to learn, then again, it's like, oh, who was that? Who was Rebecca who asked that really wonderful question during lessons learned? And they'll remember you when you do reach out afterwards. So the second part of this question was for you, Rebecca, and that is, what turns you off from making an investment? What's kind of a no-no for you?
I think a no-no is seeing a founder experience their first setback or challenge and not knowing how to handle it. And I think that, when you've given someone your money, you expect them to, as Allie said, you're investing really in that person, not necessarily always their product. And so seeing, okay, here's the first incident that happened, here's my solution and plan, is always better than, hey, don't know what to do, what do you think I should do? And so I think that's what would turn me off. Or someone giving up too easily, someone not being as aggressive as they need to be. And that aggressiveness is underrated. It never has to end. If you are taking people's money and they want a return on their investment, I think you have to be just going all the time, not to be the bearer of bad news, on how you're going to expand, grow your company, overcome challenges and overcome setbacks. And, as much as we said earlier, sleep is important, but having that knowledge that, people are taking a chance on you with their hard-earned cash, and what are you going to do to really secure it and grow things?
Yeah, something I've heard you say before, it's like you really value proactiveness, if that's a word. And you, like Allie said before, resiliency. Just kind of a theme that I'm noticing with some of these answers around investing. Speaking of investing, we have another question from Jenny E, and this one's for you, Allie, and that is, what is the number one way to find angels and VCs to invest in your company?
So the way that I would find angels, honestly, is, again, warm leads are great, but I would go on LinkedIn and I would see who are people that are really successful in your category. Or maybe you already have an idea of that, right? Where there's this sort of dream person, and look for angels initially that you would also potentially want as investors. Because anybody who's on your cap table needs to also be helpful in growing the business. And that person, if they're in the industry, are also going to be able to introduce you to other helpful people that might be adjacent to their skill set. But you'd be surprised at how many people can be angels too, right? It might even be this person's first angel check that they'll write. And it might not be the biggest check, but they'll be really helpful in unlocking doors. But I do think that it's really minimized the ability to just reach out to people. And if you know a lot about their background, you know a lot about exactly why you want them to be on your cap table, exactly how you would want them to help you, you'll be surprised at how eager and willing people would be to be part of your business, because they probably feel the same way, right? They're like, oh wow, I could really help this person grow, and I'm really interested in this business. And I also know X, Y, and Z person that could do the same. So I would say start with LinkedIn, see who you have in common with that person, reach out to the people that you have in common and see if they're willing to make an intro. If not, a cold outreach, even on LinkedIn, can work. I know some people use LinkedIn more than others. Like Rebecca's like, I don't really often look at LinkedIn. But a lot of times people do, or find them via DM them on their Instagram, because chances are if they're not an influencer on their Instagram, if you DM them, they're going to be much more likely to get back to you, because they're not going to have a whole lot of people that do that regularly. So those are the ways that I would go about it if you're just starting out. You can also look on Crunchbase. If you go on Crunchbase, you can actually see who's invested in like-minded companies or similar industry companies. So you can see sort of those super angels that are much bigger in their check size. So if they're sort of high up in the cap table or listed on Crunchbase, that typically means they're investing a big check, almost as big as like a VC. So those are ways to find like the super angels, the big time angel investors. And then just asking other founders. That's a great, plug for 10th house. It's invaluable to get that information from other founders, because then they'll also give you advice and have information on how that person is as an investor in their company.
Yeah. Sounds like the crux of what you're saying too is networking and research. So I know Rebecca loves to use the word grit. You've got to have that grit and put yourself out there. And speaking of you, Rebecca, this next question is for you from Katie, and that is: retention is such a key indicator of a company's success. Rebecca, what are your tips on building a community of repeat buyers?
Customer service, which I'm not going to sit here and say we've been excelling at lately. We had some warehouse issues, and never move warehouses. That's one thing I'll say. If you want to retain customers, but I think it's all about customer service, and I've learned along the years that role is incredibly important. And it's interesting. You'll have someone email the company, and then they'll DM you, and if they don't hear back from you on the DM, even though you've emailed them back, it's considered bad customer service. So you have to sort of be answering everyone wherever they're showing up, be it Twitter, Instagram, and the expectations are really high these days. And there are people, bigger companies that have more staff and more hires to respond to one person on all 12 channels. And so trying to compete with that sometimes is hard. But customer service, any rewards programs I think are great for customers. And making sure that you are going above and beyond. Again, I'm not speaking from us having the ultimate customer service experience, but are things that goals that we have is how do you delight and surprise your customer? One thing when I launched the book is I sent 7,000 books to top customers. So they got a surprise from me with a personal note in the mail. And that was something that really reinforced a relationship and made them excited to get it. So I think where you can do those things, it definitely goes a long way.
I love that. That's such a good answer. Allie, this next question is for you, and it's from Tahira. Something I don't know a lot of people know, because we talk so much about investing and raising capital inside a female founder collective, but FFC, and specifically the 10th house, is a bootstrapped company. So Allie, as a bootstrapped company, what were the first steps you took to scale FFC?
Well, the irony is like you need money to scale. So even with bootstrapping, you know that you have to have a certain amount of money come in the door in order to build the business. So what did we need? So the first thing I always do when coming into a new business, or even if it's a funded business, is building a model, right? So you have to project out, who do I think I need? And you kind of create these scenarios, right? Of like, who do I definitely need, right? What are the areas in the business? And when I say who, it's because most of the businesses that I've been in, the bulk of the operating costs are coming from people, not necessarily inventory, because we're not in an inventory business. So if it's an inventory business, it's how much, do I need to buy, and by when do I need to have that, and what does that look like from a cash perspective for the business, and then when do I start making revenue? For us, it was easier to bootstrap because we worked with brand partners really for them to be funding the business upfront, right? So we would build out programs and servicing our community, working through brand partners. Ultimately, I would know how much cash is going to be coming in the door, or I could forecast a minimum amount so that I could know, okay, from a personnel perspective, an operating cost perspective, how much do I have to spend? And we did that over a 3-year period. So this isn't just for 1 year, because you're all of a sudden going to get to the end of that year and you're going to go, oh, wait, now what for the next year? Now, we still do budgeting for the next year as well, but you never want to end up in a situation where you go, oh my God, wait, we ran out of cash. And the way that you don't do that is by looking at it also really regularly. So if you're not tracking to goals, if you're not hitting revenue numbers, or you're spending more than you were before, you need to then recalibrate the numbers and say, okay, now what do I have to do on revenue if I'm spending more? Or what do I have to do on costs because I'm not making as much from a revenue perspective as I had projected? So I think that's always what I encourage founders to do before anything else, because you shouldn't make any hires or be spending really any money until you know you can do that, or on sort of a baseline level from a projection standpoint, you can cover those costs.
Projections are so huge. And if you haven't already, we do have a one-page financial planning lead magnet inside of the 10th house. So if you go to that website, you'll see there's an easy download and spreadsheet there that you can use to create some projections, as a shameless plug. This next question is for you, Rebecca, from Presley G. And before I ask this question, I don't know if everybody on this Zoom knows, or on this call knows, that you started Rebecca Minkoff in your kitchen in your 20s. So this question is, have you always had an entrepreneurial spirit, or was there a specific moment when you decided to go off on your own?
I've definitely always had an entrepreneurial spirit. It was probably started for me when I realized my mom wouldn't buy me anything that I wanted, and so I'd have to earn my own, earn and buy whatever I wanted. So it started young, and once I began to see the power and control you can have in your life by taking, the reins, then you don't want to look back. And so it's definitely started at a very young age and still continues.
Absolutely. Okay, one final question, and this one is for you both. And this one is from Jeanette S. Would you do something differently if you could go back in time? And this is in relation to your businesses. If yes, what? Allie, let's start with you.
Well, for me, it's like I've been in a lot of different businesses. And I would say, no, I wouldn't do anything differently. I would say, well, I would try to push the founders I was working with to sell more quickly than we got some sales offers and we didn't take them because we were like, oh, we can make the business even bigger. We can keep scaling it. So I would say a huge lesson, I think, for all founders is when you're going into your business and you're building it, is really think about what you want and the time frame for that and what kind of lifestyle you want. Because if you're trying to build $1 billion plus business, it's the chances of you succeeding are very slim. But you can oftentimes build a business that is a great business and it's smaller, and you maybe don't take home, $100 million, but you might take home 5, 10, and is that meaningful for you? So it's sort of setting up what you want and sort of your goals. So I would say selling much earlier in the journey for a lot of the founders that I've worked with in the past. But I would also say that I was like a total, I think it served me. Ultimately, it taught me a lot. And so I wouldn't take it back. But I was like a real asshole when I was like in my late 20s, early 30s, just thinking like that I could do anything. And I really didn't understand what a weight or responsibility it was to have a business, and how hard it actually was. And so I think my attitude in that, I fell flat on my face a couple times, and from a manager, like the managers over me, I gave them probably hell, and they probably absolutely hated me. We've since had conversations where I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was like, now being in the position you were in, I feel really bad about sort of how I acted, because I knew nothing. And I was just so audacious and bold and sort of thought that I knew everything. But I think that those are really good learnings. And I think as a founder, I would be really conscious of being persistent, being bold, being ambitious, being aggressive, but also checking yourself. It's an interesting balance, just to make sure that you're not doing something that is just really inappropriate.
Yeah, you don't want to leave a bad taste in anyone's mouth, because you never know what that handshake could lead to.
It's a hard balance.
Yeah. Rebecca, what about you? Would you do anything differently?
I think I would just, I talk about this in my book, so you should buy it. But I think just being we took a ton of risks, but there was always this fear and worry and concern that I had during that time period. And I realized that when you take a risk, you learn something or you win. It's not a failure. And I would have just taken the risks without losing sleep at night.
Yep, it all comes back to sleep. I see some people in the chat asking for that financial plan that I mentioned. That's inside of the 10th house community. So if you're a member, just log in, and in your search bar, just type in one page financial plan, and it should pop right up. If not, I can repost it later today for you all. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. I am normally in the chat talking to you all, but you are engaging with one another, which is super exciting. We had people as far as Nigeria, I see Toronto, Philly, I see Germany, Ethiopia, San Francisco, Florida. So many people here joining us today, which we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. And again, as a thank you, be sure to use Founder Spring 15 when you apply for the 10th house for just about $100 off of your membership if you're accepted. So do that by the 14th. That is when the cohort applications close, and then that orientation is on the 20th. So if you have already applied and you're wondering when you're going to meet us all, that will be on the 20th. We'll all be there to greet you as a full cohort. So thank you, Allie and Rebecca, for joining me today. I will talk to you probably in Slack here in about 5 seconds.
Thanks,
Bye, everyone.
everyone.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.